That's essentially where I want the contour shape to be. Something on the end of that brush. If you're new here, hi, my name is Miss Megan Robinson, and today I'm going to take you through what you need to know about bronzing versus contour, because everybody is getting it wrong and the internet is confusing you and it's really bothering me. If you want to see all my tips and tricks when it comes to bronzing and contouring, please keep on watching. You have to understand the rules before you break them. So in order to find out what formula to use, if you want a bronze tour, if you want cream, if you want powder, you can't pick those yet until you understand the basics of what is bronzing and what is contour. Contour creates shape, bronzing adds warmth. So when you look at these two MILANI creams here, this one is Spilling Tea, this one is Hey Honey. And here is slightly warmer, so this would be a more bronzy shade on me, where this one is slightly more of that gray, cool undertone that's going to help create shadow on the skin. So this would be a contour shade. Bronzing and contouring are makeup application techniques. They're not necessarily product. So even if you see something you like and you're like, oh my God, that powder eyeshadow is exactly the contour color that I want, you're gonna get it because it's following the rules of what contouring or bronzing is. Just because it doesn't say bronzer on it doesn't mean you can't use it. So this is the Makeup by Mario Skin Enhancer. This one here, medium, that same warm, reddish, orangey undertone to the brown, where medium dark has more of that yellowy, cool, almost greenish undertone to it. So this is my contour shade. This is my bronzing shade. Both powder bronzers. This is Melt Santa Barbara. Sits more on that coolish side, so I'm more likely to contour with this one. This guy here, this is Haus Labs Light Level 3, clearly more on the orangey side, so going to sit more like a bronzer. I had to record this video a second time. I forgot to blend out my concealer under my nose, so I had already started to put down a little bit of the cream bronzer and I had to start again. This is a product from MAC Pro. This is the Contour Face Palette. This is my second one. These two colors that are diagonal from each other, they have more of that warm red undertone. When you are bronzing, it means you're warming up the skin. So think of a tan, think of when you get sun. The sun is gonna hit you in certain areas, which is gonna be the top of the forehead and the top of the cheekbone. Now, I like to do more of like an underpainting, where normally I would put this underneath my foundation. The order in which you apply stuff can vary depending on how you like to do your makeup. You don't have to do both cream and powder. You could do one or the other. But this is adding basically color back into the skin. If you remember when I had just said that the bronzers and the bronzing shades have that red, orange color to them, that's because when you add warmth, you add redness because it's getting hot, it's getting warm. So if you understand MAC undertones, that's why warmth is always a red undertone and not a cool undertone, because you're adding warmth, things are getting hot. Beige is where you basically start out. If you think of just nothing, just a beige tone, if you're adding warmth to something, you're bronzing the skin, you're adding warmth, you're going in the red orange direction. That's bronzing the skin. So you can take it a step further and put bronzing powder on top as well. This is Light Level 3 from Haus Labs. This is still going on the top. So the old school way of hearing things is like the C shape, but really under here is where you should have your contour shades. But again, learn the rules first, break them later. You can see this side is really flat. It's just one tone. It's kind of whatever. So here we get a little bit more shape, a little bit more dimension, and I have that warmth to my skin. With that being said, this still adds a little bit of shape to my face, which is why some people are fine with just bronzing. So if you look at this and you're like, oh God, like I can see my cheekbones, this looks great. Do I need to contour as well? Maybe not. Because I've put bronzer on people and they have the most beautiful cheekbones, and a little swipe of that was all they need. It enhanced the contour on its own. But again, that's gonna range person to person, and that's why the only way that you're going to learn what you love is by investing in your makeup skill with your makeup application, not trying out multiple products to find the answer. Contour is technically a little bit harder. So when you look at your face, your contour shade should be the color that's being cast from the natural shadows that are happening. So they're gonna be on that grayish side. As you get into deeper undertones on the skin, they almost have like a really rich kind of purpley tone. You have this skin tone here, like if that's your base color, you need to go in and create more depth with something that's richer. It would look something like this palette here, where you're adding in those rich purpley, almost bluish tones. That it's always like a more, if you remember like film noir blush or even sketch blush, just depending on the undertone to the skin or how you want your skin to look, that's how you can go and add in those really rich contour shades. This has been my cream contour of the week. This is the M80 Mob Beauty Cream Bronzer. And this is such an old school trick, if you tilt your head to the side, you can see that there's like a slight shadow being cast there. That's essentially where I want the contour shape to be. Was there something on the end of that brush? A little bit. So this area down here, you do not want anything but your foundation. No bronzer, no blush, no contour. It's from the hollow up. So how you hold your brush and how you place your brush is gonna affect how that looks. So I go here, but I don't go all the way back to the ear because I pair mine with bronzer too. That whole area will connect. I personally like the temple. So kind of right from this area in here. I can't really see what I'm doing because of my lights. I hope you can see. So when I sit a little bit further back and then under the jawline here. Now, the reason that I feel like for the average person, bronzing is a little bit more normal or a little bit more easier to function with is because it's something that picks up really naturally. Where contour, you can just see it a little bit more. Does it have to be that way depending on the product that you use? But for me, because I like creams, it's always gonna be a little bit stronger for me. If you went in with a really soft powder in this area, kind of different story. I like to just make sure that those edges are blended. And the other question too is why do you want to contour? Like, what do you want to contour? If you can't answer that question, if you can't say, I want to make my nose smaller, I want to enhance my cheekbones, I want to enhance my jawline, I want to shorten my forehead. If you can't answer that, then you're not necessarily ready for contour yet. You also don't have to do either. Of a bronzy contoured nose, that's just me. So this is that Mob Beauty one. And I like to go right down the side. So because I wear a full face of makeup, this has to look good from all angles. If you do too intense of a contour right away, like I could make this nose look so snatched from the front and then you turn to the side and it's a nightmare. Those are all things that you have to consider. I need to put a lip on. I get really into what I'm doing and then like don't really check other things. This is playing tricks on the eye for what actually exists. Now, you could take it an even step further and use even smaller brushes to get really, really precise. That's just not how I do my makeup, but again, that's something that you can think about. So a lot of warmth, beginning to get a little bit more structure. This has been my contour powder of the week, Mob Beauty M37, just powder bronzer. When it comes to contouring, your tools are so important because contouring is a lot more strategic and you have to be really specific about your placement. This is the 187. I use just the tips to work. It's so weird when it's not sitting really on anything else. And sometimes too, you're just enhancing what already exists. You're not looking to change. I'm not looking to restructure my jaw, but I'm just trying to enhance what's already there. I literally need to add bronzer to this immediately because I love both. So if I was to enhance this side with contour, I can't go back completely over top of what I just did because that's where it's gonna get muddy. So we're gonna add a little bit to the same areas, but now that it's being paired with the bronzer, it's a little bit more of a structured, completed look. I like to make sure that those edges are super diffused. Now if I go in and I add bronzer here, same thing. I'm gonna keep it a little bit more towards the back because it needs to marry off. I never start with contour. I always start with bronzer. So this side right now is going to be a little bit more on the cooler side versus where I started with the bronzer. That's why the order in which you put your product down does matter and does change the look a bit. I'm big on forehead bronzer. Like that's where I like to be that's where I like to have a lot of sun. C8 Studio Fix powder, couldn't find it for the life of me. One of my favorite bronzers because it has like an olive undertone to it. Sits so nice on my skin tone and it's the most natural look. The more orangier shades I don't lean towards all the time. So those are kind of like the basic steps to bronzer and contour. Creating shape, creating shadow, being strategic about your placement, bronzer, adding warmth, deepening the complexion, adding a little bit of life back into the skin. From here, once you have those basics down, you understand what it is, this is where you can start to play with your makeup and like see what you like. So for me, when it comes to bronzing, I love bronzer on my chin. Like technically the sun's not hitting here, but I also understand that we need to add like a completed look. And I love bronzer on the bridge of my nose. This will be hit because if the sun's coming down here, it's hitting the bridge of my nose for sure. Love it, lock it in. I like working on a hydrated, very wet, usually creamy base. Okay, I don't know, the light level changes when I put my arms up, just so you can see it better. Oh, because there's more darkness on screen. So it's trying to create a white balance. What the hell? Okay, I think that's better. Another reason why I prefer underpainting is because a lot of this is sitting on the surface of the skin to me where I like it to be a little bit more underneath. But again, you're not gonna know if you like that until you master doing your own bronzer or doing your own contouring yourself and seeing what you can change after. I'm grabbing for product, but can you see the beautiful shape that my cheek has? That wouldn't be there otherwise. I'm gonna use a cream highlight on one side and a powder on the other. These are the Melt Digital Liquid Highlight. And so you can see just because of the formula of the Haus Labs bronzer, there's already radiance that's happening. So on top of bronzer as well, when it comes to shaping the face, highlight also goes on the higher planes of the face. I'm just going to tap mine on. And depending on how much you use can determine how highlighted. So take this under the brow bone. And one of my favorite spots is up here. What you decide, whether it's contour, highlight, bronzing, this can decipher what the overall vibe is of your makeup. If you are like, I love being a bronze glowy goddess, bronzer highlight might be your priority, contour being second. If you're somebody that wants to look like snatched, contour might be your better option. These are the digital dust highlighters. Highlight's fun because it can go on a lot of different areas. You could do above the lip, you could do the nose, you could do the bridge. Options are really endless. When you have two down, they really enhance each other versus this one side. Common things I hear is, well, where the hell does blush go? It can still be incorporated into all of this. Blush is going to marry into the bronzer or the contour. I'm gonna do it on the contoured side first. I have a fuller cheek that's a little bit more round. Sometimes having flat blush just kind of straight up and down will help flatten that rounder area. For other people, it's having it off that area and having a focus up on the cheekbone more. This is something, try both and see what you like best. For me, I like mine almost sandwiching on top because it's gonna bring all of that together. It's still not bronzer. This is where things get complicated, but again, when you understand the rules, you can break them to this level. I'm almost placing this in the same area that I'm placing the bronzer, but because it isn't that warm orangey red shade, like it's still sitting very much in a pink, in a blush category, that's why it's still blush. I wouldn't take this all over those areas, but maybe your blush has those bronzy undertones to them and you can do that. So that's why you have to understand the texture you're working with, the formula you're working with, and the finish of the product. So I like to go right into my temple. So now the highlight and contour don't seem as separate from each other because the blush is marrying them together. And on this side, sometimes I just do it just on the top, just so it's making it's a different tone than just the bronzer on its own. And you can see because there's so much product on this side, it's a lot more enhanced than this side, which is a little bit softer. To figure out the lighting, so we're just gonna keep the arm up here. So this here, very warm, glowy, sexy, bronzy kind of vibes. This, a little bit more clean looking, have a little bit of shape, a little bit of blush, and that sheen from the highlight, but you don't know where each one starts. They're all married together. So that's why if somebody comes up to me and they're like, oh, I want, you know, what blush are you wearing? It's not just the blush. Both of these blushes are the same and they look entirely different depending on what they're paired with. Sometimes as well, your blush can be used to complement your lipstick, complement your eyeshadow, complement like your accessories or something in your outfit. So it serves a different purpose as well. I'm gonna take a little bit of the blush and just run it across my eyelids and a smidge of the bronzer. And then as you start to build more elements on the skin, that's how more makeup becomes incorporated. So it's not that you need anything. Makeup has levels to it where different looks can be built. Now, because all of this is done, so for me, I want more under my eye after we add all of this like color and structure back in. So if you've never worn concealer before and you just went in on, you know, bronzer and highlight, that's how a secondary product can be introduced, because there's just levels to makeup and how you build or structure a face. So I always want a little more coverage in this area, and it brightens the center part of the face. Like I said, with contour comes highlight. Taking it up the sides of the nose is gonna help make a nose contour read better in person. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you learned something about bronzing and contouring. I hope that you start to take some of what you learned and add it into your makeup routine. I'd love to hear how that goes. Let me know in the comments below if you are more a bronzer person or if you're more of a contour person. I'm definitely more bronzer if I had to pick. Like Desert Island, I can bring one face, like one color face product. I'm picking bronzer. Absolutely. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a post. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok as well, all under the same name, @Miss Megan Robinson. And until then, I'll see you next time. Bye.